When Mark Zuckerberg announced that Facebook would morph into Meta in October 2021 and the company will focus on building the Metaverse, I watched it with a sense of disbelief and amusement at the same time. While the change is often compared to the transformation that Google went through, becoming the only one of several brands under Alphabet umbrella, there is one crucial difference between the two. Alphabet is merely a convenient vehicle for Google's founders to explore other ideas, while with Meta, Zuckerberg is betting the future of the business on something that doesn't really exist. What does this mean for Facebook? And is the famed social media giant going to burst anytime soon? Hello everyone and welcome back to the Metaverse Economy channel. In this video, we will look at the failures that is soon going to be on Facebook's Metaverse. I'll be providing with all the details on why and how this is going to happen. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to catch more videos like this. Some may describe Facebook's rebranding move as bold or daring, but I see it as a hubris, particularly as Facebook itself doesn't have a history of success beyond its original social media platform. To make matters worse for Zuckerberg, history of personal computing itself is littered with examples of spectacular failures coming at the hands of otherwise very successful people and companies. Need I remind you of the Windows tablet that had its debut nearly a decade before the iPad? What about Windows phones? Microsoft's belated attempt at getting into the mobile space? What about Google+, or the modular smartphone of Google's Project Aura that was supposed to change the world of mobile forever? What about Facebook Phone or Facebook Home app that was supposed to hijack your mobile home screen with an FB interface? What about Amazon's ill-fated Fire Phone, the hilariously broken Apple Maps, its overheating G4 Cube, or entire history of axing useful ports to upsell users on a universe of clunky dongles that it had just withdrawn from with the launch of the new M1 MacBooks? What about the Groupon deal craze that all of the big tech giants try to have a stab at and failed spectacularly, burning millions before the entire business model went to hell? And closer to the VR/AR metaverse concept, what about Google Glass, Microsoft HoloLens, Magic Leap that wowed people with fake videos? All of them are still alive, but as niche enterprise products instead of the mass-market AR devices that once promised to change how we interact with the world around. That said, whenever any of the major players Google, Apple, Amazon, or Microsoft launch another ill-conceived product or service, they never bet their entire companies on it. Whatever it was merely an addition, an extension of their offering, a venture into something new that may or may not work, but not a redefinition of what the business is fundamentally about. With Meta, however, Zuckerberg decided to go through a convoluted rebranding exercise that doesn't even have a viable product or service that anybody actually wants to use. Sure, he pledged $10 billion in annual investment into the Meta over the next decade, which for comparison is about half of NASA's annual budget. Think what could be done with it. But throwing money at a problem doesn't lead anywhere if you don't even know what is the problem you're trying to solve. And it doesn't seem that Zuckerberg himself has any idea. Meta's promise broadly encompasses two areas: virtual reality and augmented mixed reality. The latter, however, has already been tackled by Google, Microsoft, and smaller third-party companies. In other words, Meta Facebook isn't even a first mover in the space and is up against billions of dollars that its competitors have already spent on the product that are in actual use. To revolutionize AR, it would have to produce devices that fulfill the criteria others have thus far failed at. Given that it's not a hardware company, nor one with a history of success at launching any particular devices on its own, a healthy dose of skepticism is obviously necessary. In terms of VR, it has acquired the highly popular Oculus and is leading the global sales of VR headsets, even though the original founding team has already left the company. However, the question is now, how big is the use case for VR headsets at all? The dominant sector is, of course, gaming, which is the main, if not the sole driver of VR hardware purchases. And indeed, Zuckerberg spoke of gaming extensively during his presentation and how games will be a major part of Meta's Metaverse. There is just one problem. VR games existed before Metaverse entered common vocabulary. You don't need some grand platform to enjoy them. In a way, every computer game is a small metaverse in itself, whether it's VR or not, where you transform into a soldier, gangster, general, racing driver, or a business tycoon, and then you log out back into the real world when you're done living your parallel digital adventures. VR has been around with mixed success for years. There are many popular titles like Beat Saber, though few that we could label as AAA. With the exception of Half-Life Alyx, where game developers Valve leveraged the legendary brand of its first-person shooter. So, despite Zuckerberg touting Metaverse as a fun place where you can play games with friends, the reality is that you can already do it. VR gaming is already here, growing and likely to become a significant segment of the entertainment in the future. But that is not the news. Do we need a fancy new name for that? Do we need an intermediary platform to get access to something that someone already has done? Meta clearly wants to position itself as a gatekeeper to the virtual world, piggybacking on the popularity of its largely subsidized headsets to become a middleman, taking a cut from everything happening in it. Zuckerberg thinks that beyond gaming, Metaverse is going to become a world of virtual social gatherings, where we will be meeting with our friends, colleagues, bosses, and even more immersive, personal interactions with them than through a flat screen of a phone or a laptop. And he wants a piece of it. Not discouraged by the failures of Facebook Home that was supposed to hijack our smartphone screens, Zuckerberg raises the stakes and wants to hijack our eyeballs and senses. But does anybody actually want that? Sitting at home with a plastic strap beaming virtual worlds into our eyeballs for hours, duping us into thinking we're somewhere else instead of actually going there. It's even worse. With facial tracking built into the headsets, the device will transmit your expressions over the internet to your co-participants, removing the only advantage of Zoom and Skype calls, which was the ability to occasionally go dark on your camera and not be seen while the meeting goes on. So you can have a cup of coffee or a bagel without anybody watching disapprovingly or seeing your eyeballs roll. Can you imagine sitting through a business meeting with a plastic helmet over your head and eyes for an hour more, even if it's in your own house? And save for the pandemic that kept many of us locked in our homes, who would choose a virtual meetup with fake avatars of your buddies over a beer, popcorn, and a cinema night out in the city? The problem with Meta's vision of the Metaverse is that it's not so much augmenting our reality, but competing with it. The few cases that VR may be attractive for, like gaming, making fitness more fun, or virtual visits to places around the world, are already available. What exactly is Meta's role beyond developing new hardware built on the back of its Oculus acquisition? Zuckerberg never explained, although we can sense that he wants to be, as I said, a middleman controlling everybody in the virtual world. Watching technical demos and visions for the future presented by Meta, you can't escape the impression that the company is about to burn about $100 billion in the next decade trying to achieve what we already have, a reality. Yes, if they manage to create, for instance, a photorealistic simulation of fabrics in a virtual clothing store, it's going to be a nice feat of engineering. However, we can already get the best possible experience by visiting a physical store. One could make a case that this sort of technology could help people who live far or perhaps have disabilities. But the former is changing with rapid worldwide urbanization, and the latter, while useful, is just a niche. In Zuckerberg's vision of the Metaverse, people can really just live in bunkers hooked up to virtual reality 24/7, going out on fake meetings, decorating their fake houses, enjoying fake holidays, living fake lives. He's talking about building relationships and connecting people, but what he is actually trying to do is disconnect us from each other and supersede real-life experiences with fake ones, for which you will, however, be charged very real money. Last but certainly not the least, there is the company's very questionable reputation. Facebook is known for invasion of privacy, abuse of personal data, and worst of all, general inability to refine even its own social media platform. Zuckerberg is painting a great vision of life-changing technologies while he can't sort his main business out. There are approximately 3 billion users on Facebook, but how many of them are fake accounts, either peddling scams, leaving fake reactions and comments, or people trying to escape its overbearing censorship by using multiple names? So far, the company is struggling to weed out criminal activity and spam from the platform, and yet it wants to build a parallel virtual universe for billions. There is nothing that would reassure users that Meta can ensure the environment is not going to become a garbage dump of spam, abuse, or downright criminal activity, since it struggles to address these even on its largely text-based predecessor. Equally, there is nothing to convince them that it is any more concerned about their privacy than it has been thus far, and its currently janky state might kill its prospects long before it can produce something of value. Finally, there is nothing that would suggest it can actually deliver anything that it promises. Facebook is Zuckerberg's only success. Every other endeavor has thus far been a failure. Instead of competing, he simply bought Instagram or WhatsApp. He's struggling with video or attracting young audiences from TikTok. His venture into e-commerce on Facebook or Instagram failed to yield significant results. In other words, beyond the original concept of connecting people and giving them a timeline gathering whatever they may be interested in, Zuckerberg hasn't made any significant breakthroughs. And now, not only has he decided to venture into virtual reality, but he has bet his entire company on it. If he fails, and it seems quite likely, and he has to walk it all back a few years down the road, it will be the biggest failure in the history of the internet. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video useful, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.